During the 1930s, shortly after the stock market crashed in 1929, a great drought swept through the southern plains of the United States, bringing high winds and severe dust storms that killed crops, livestock, and people. This decade-long drought will later be known as the Dust Bowl. As the Dust Bowl intensified, it began to have a major impact on the economic state of the U.S., which was already struggling under the Great Depression. Many farm families were driven to taking on a desperate migration in hopes of better work and living conditions. Many of these migrants came from Oklahoma and were called Okies. In 1935, the Resettlement Administration, a New Deal agency created to help relocate these struggling families, hired Dorothea Lange to spread awareness of the economic state of America, documenting the lack of protection of economic rights. The use of photojournalism was still a relatively new concept, as one of the earliest prevalent photojournalists, Jacob Riis, came only about 60 years earlier. Riis was a Danish-American journalist, photographer, and social reformer who generally focused on the improvement of urban life, child labor laws, and building codes. One of the few photojournalists to ever fill Jacob Riis's footsteps, Dorothea Lange was born in New Jersey in 1895. In 1902, Lange would suffer a case of polio, limiting mobility in her right leg, which would later be thought to contribute towards her sympathy and acceptance while working with the less fortunate. When she was 12, Lange's father fled from her and her family's life for reasons unknown, although it is speculated he was fleeing from a criminal offense, leaving Lange to grow up with just her mother. Later, Lange and her mother would move to New York, where Dorothea would be exposed to the New York poverty as well as its immigrant ghettos. Her later sensitivity to people living in such conditions can be partially attributed to growing up in this environment. At the age of 20, Lange began to travel, selling photographs to aid in financing her journeys. In 1916, Lange found herself in California, where she observed the poor treatment of the unemployed, homeless, and migrant workers. After the stock market crash of 1929, California saw the number of homeless and migrant workers skyrocket. Not being able to stand the poor social conditions of the time, Lange left her studio in 1932 to photograph the true economic conditions of America. This is where Lange's career as a photojournalist would start. In 1933, Lange took a photograph of men lined up for a soup kitchen run by a widow named Louis Jordan, who was given the nickname White Angel. This photo is aptly called the White Angel Breadline and contributed greatly to her reputation as a documentary photographer. In 1935, Lange was hired by Paul Schuster Taylor, a future collaborator as well as husband to Lange, as part of a rehabilitation program to aid migrant workers and make sure their economic rights were met. This rehab program, known as the Resettlement Administration, later replaced by the Farm Security Administration, also known as the FSA, was one of many New Deal programs designed to build relief camps, offer loans, and assist farmers impacted by the Dust Bowl and Depression in relocation. While impactful, these programs were also very pricey and required significant government funding. In order to help fund these programs, various forms of advertisement were applied. One such advertisement type was photography. Photographs conveyed much more emotion and gained much more sympathy than words could, and skilled photographers, such as Lange, were able to use their talent to humanize the harsh economic status of most Americans at the time. Dorothea Lange was brought on almost instantly as part of a team of documentary photographers tasked with capturing raw emotion and invoking empathy for the suffering Americans. While several other photographers, namely Arthur Rothstein and Walker Evans, also worked with the FSA's photography team, Lange by far had the largest impact on their goal of helping the migrants. She used photography to bring about social change and amplify the voices of those struggling under the Great Depression, humanizing the struggles of the poor families and migrants. Lange's photographs not only documented the struggles of these families, they also showed their daily lives. Portraits taken by her showed the emotion behind the economic struggle of poor families and migrants, humanizing these often overlooked and marginalized groups. Lange's photos didn't just show the struggles of these people, they showed the strength and resilience obtained by these people through their struggles. One example of this is Lange's most widely known photograph, Migrant Mother, portraying Florence Owens Thompson and her children. This photo would become a symbol of the sacrifices made by struggling families and drew sympathy from many Americans. This sympathy would be used to gain attention from the public and to generate publicity in order to give a face to the struggling American economy. Lange's photographs brought faces and names to the otherwise boring discussion of economics and policy. While these hard-to-understand statistics did not do much for the FSA's effort, Lange's photographs definitely did. Her portraits had an emotional appeal which helped gain public support for the FSA. Lange's photos not only helped gain support for the FSA's effort, they also showed what kind of aid was needed. They helped portray the need for policies like aid for farmers, low-interest loans, and improvement of living conditions. This played an important role in proving the necessity of government aid. While Lange did work under the FSA, not all of her photographs were aimed towards gaining support for government programs. Some of her photos helped raise awareness of the poor labor conditions in migrant camps as well. Lange's pictures proved that these conditions were not just a temporary bump in the road, and that something needed to be done. Lastly, Lange played a direct role in the development of policies within the FSA, showcasing the need for aid and the complex lives of migrants. Her photographs gave policymakers a clearer picture of the struggling situation of different groups, putting them in more human terms. Lange's images created a spectrum of emotions to oppose the black and white economic facts. Overall, Lange didn't just document the lives of the poor. She advocated for them and for change. Her photos were an instrument of social change, personally bonding the subjects of her portraits and their viewers, and generating the support needed for the FSA's relief programs. Lange made it her responsibility to protect the rights of the poor. In fact, her work had a large impact on the rights of the less fortunate, particularly marginalized groups such as the migrant workers. Lange made it her responsibility, both ethically and socially, to fight for the economic and social rights of these struggling groups. Lange's impact while working with the FSA went far beyond her photography. Her photos humanized migration, poverty, and the struggles of the marginalized, portraying them as the humans they are, as opposed to the statistics they were often portrayed as otherwise. Lange captured the strength and resilience of many migrants and told their stories through black and white images. Lange continued to make an impact even after her work with the FSA during the Depression concluded. She continued to be an advocate for social change and went on to apply her photojournalism skills to the Japanese internment camps of World War II. She also paved the way for women in photography, being one of the first significant female photographers in a mainly male-dominated field. During a period in which women's artistic abilities were often silenced, Lange was a beam of hope for other female artists. Not only did Lange have an impact on her time, she changed the future of photojournalism forever. Before her, photography was mainly a form of artistic expression. Lange, however, combined her skills with the camera with her passion for social change in order to transform photography into a way of social activism, showing how a camera was capable of capturing human emotion and stories. For this reason, you can find many of Lange's iconic photographs in textbooks, history classes, and exhibits which discuss American history, specifically the social issues in the 1930s and 40s. Lange's migrant mother remains one of the most iconic and recognizable photographs in the history of photojournalism, proving that to this day, the camera is a relevant tool in the fight for social change.